Mr. Fuzi.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, we are back. Yo, everybody. Hi. So today, hi, Kate.
What's up, Fuzi?
Wow, nice background.
It's the way I live my life. I'm surrounded by Fuzi.
Yeah, you can see. Okay, I represent Museum of
it.
Graffiti.
That's it. We're in it. We're in it.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm really happy to welcome you. Today is my first time I'm doing live, so it's in English, so people has to be aware that my English is not the best. Usually I'm on my podcast in French and it's way easier for me, but I'm super happy to discuss with you. So everybody here can probably interact and send some message, and if they have questions, please do it. But first of all, Alan, Kate, can you introduce yourself to the people?
Sure. So my name is Alan Cat. Many people just know me as Cat. I am born and raised in New York City. Started off as a graffiti writer as a teenager in the 1980s when I was painting trains along with my friends and causing trouble like everybody else. I've had a long career in publishing, marketing, fashion, internet, companies. And my latest big project is the Museum of Graffiti, which is located in Miami, Florida, in the Wynwood neighborhood. It's a project now. The museum is entering its third year. And so it is sort of my latest endeavor, or one of my latest endeavors. And the newest one, which is really brand new, is Glyphic Nft, which is a project for the NFT space that focuses on graffiti artists and street artists and bringing them together with streetwear into this sort of new Web3 environment.
Okay, so we'll talk obviously about this NFT thing because I'm involved and I want to talk about that. It's really something important for me. But first, and we'll talk also about the museum because I think it's extremely important what you're doing with other people, Alison and other people there, because it's really important for our culture. But first of all, I want you to talk a little bit more about your past in the graffiti in New York, because obviously I'm still obsessed about graffiti in New York City on the subway. It's something who really influenced me. I think a lot of people from my generation in Europe or even other generation has been really obsessed by that too. You arrived into graffiti in New York on subway. At which date exactly? So in which neighborhood? Who was your first contact?
Sure. So I was very lucky. I discovered graffiti as a teenager. I grew up in Brooklyn, and in my neighborhood, I grew up in a neighborhood called Williamsburg, Brooklyn. And so now Williamsburg, people know it as sort of this fancy place. Yeah. But when I grew up there, it was a very dangerous place. It wasn't fancy. Nobody knew what it was. It looked like all those pictures that you would see now of the South Bronx, where all the buildings were burned down. That's what the way Williamsburg was. And in that neighborhood,
excuse me, it was what period of time it was?
This is in the 1970s and the 1980s. Even into the 1990s, it looked like that. You know? And so growing up there, it was a neighborhood that was primarily Puerto Rican, and it had already a tradition from the 1960s into the 1970s and the 80s of gang culture, meaning street gangs. And so the walls were covered with lots of graffiti that was just gang graffiti everywhere. Really strange names, the Arabian Nights, the Unknown Bikers, all kinds of things like that. All the gangs looked like they were motorcycle gangs, but they had no motorcycles, you know. And so it was just there was just this style. It was tough. They looked like these, like the movie The Warriors, but so a bit like that.
I have to stop you because you have this reference about the warriors. This is also something who traumatized a whole generation in Europe, warriors. So warriors for you, is it something legit, something like who picture something real? We know it's a movie, it's not real, but
it's a
what
bit
part
of a,
was real into that?
it's a bit of a Hollywood thing, but the real thing was that there was, like, the way the warriors looked with the vests,
Yeah.
the main crew from the warriors, that was real. People dressing up in baseball outfits or whatever, not real. Everybody looked like the guys with the vests or with denim jackets with the cut-off sleeves, really tough and short and fighting from neighborhood to neighborhood. Neighborhoods had their own gangs, or many neighborhoods had many gangs. So in my neighborhood, a gang might have a territory of just a few blocks, you know, not very big. And so some, you know, had more territory. So they were all over the neighborhood. There were, you know, black gangs and white gangs and Irish gangs and Puerto Rican gangs and everything.
And when you talk about gangs, the gangs were group of people, friends, or is it gangs like drug related or graffiti related? What was the definition for you of gang of this period?
For gangs were like, gangs to me were like the families from it was your street family. And so, you know, you have your family in your house, you know, and then you go outside and you have your friends, and your friends become your family. And so the gangs really were your, you know, your street family. And so for many, many people, they came from broken homes. Their parents were never around. And so the gangs, their friends became their family. And so they just got together and hung out all the time. And many of them ended up leaving their homes and living in these abandoned buildings and sort of squatting in these buildings. And that's where they were. And so, you know, the way that we called the gangs, we weren't really calling it gangs by the 80s or the 70s. We called it outlaws. And so, you know, they were called outlaws. And it was the way that they dressed. It was the way that they chose to live their life. They were outside of the law. They didn't care about the law. You know, they were tough. They would fight. They would, you know, get involved with maybe illegal activity. And it was just very normal.
But it's not this definition, or I don't know, this vision we have about gangs in the US, gangs related to selling drugs or stuff like that. At this period, it was not that.
No, it was before
correct?
That. It was a bit it was before that. It was really gangs for the sake of fighting. I mean, some of the gangs did sell drugs. Some of the gangs were more involved with maybe extortion, you know. But it was more so a club of people hanging together for the sake of just hanging together. But yeah, so, you know, so when you grow up in these neighborhoods that have gang culture, graffiti is part of it. They're you know, graffiti that we're talking about, writing our names, Fuzi, Ket, came later. It's a phenomenon from the late 60s or 70s. Before that, there's been gang graffiti for decades, for a very, very long time. And so growing up in a neighborhood like that, you see names all over the wall, but they're gang names, or maybe they're members of the gangs, and they're not competing with style. It has nothing to do with that. It's just marking their names, saying that we're here from this neighborhood, and that's it, you know?
Okay, I understand that. So at what moment you started to paint graffiti, and what was your interest into that? So why did you started that?
So for me, the moment I started was in the early 1980s. I really started to pay attention to graffiti. I started to meet the first people in my neighborhood that were doing it. And it became very curious to me that this was something that was happening. And so when I went to high school in 1984, in high school, I met writers that were very much active. They were painting trains already. And I started to hear the stories more, and I wanted to do that.
Who were these guys? What names?
So the names were True, True. He was from a crew called 70S. His name was Carlos.
Okay.
You know, the other name of the guy, he wrote Zeno. He became one of my partners, Zeno. The other one was Ven, Ven. He became one of my partners as well, or you know.
Super nice style. Ven.
Yeah. And another one was SB. He also became one of my partners, and he went on to continue to write for he still writes. And so there was a lot of names. Everybody had a name. They maybe only wrote it a little bit, you know, a guy named AS. But my school was in a whole nother part of Brooklyn. And so my school was in Flatbush, Brooklyn. And so it was more from where Ven was from. And Ven had an older brother named Bones, and who was very famous. His name was all over the trains on the insides only. And his partner was Net, also very up and very famous, NET. And they went to my school, and their names were everywhere.
Okay.
And so I saw the names in the school. I saw the names on the trains. I started to meet these writers, and I said, you know what? I want to try to do it. And so with this writer, SB1, that I mentioned to you, he also wrote Cole. We started to go and paint in the train tracks around the school. Okay. And so we've discovered that there was these train tracks that only writers went down there to paint. And we started to paint. I started to tag up on the insides of the trains, you know, when the trains were in motion, like all the toys do.
Yeah.
And, you know,
that's the best.
Well, there was no room. The problem was there was no room. The trains were so covered that to find a place to write your name was impossible.
So what's the solution? You had to go over people? What was
the solution was that I had to abandon doing the insides of the trains and go to the outsides of the trains.
Okay.
And so I didn't know enough about the insides to say, like other people told me years later, that they would bring Coca-Cola into the train yard and spray Coca-Cola on the ink and wipe it all down, and then he would erase the ink.
Oh, the ink of the other people? So they basically buffed the other people?
Coca-Cola was a buff, and then they were able to tag. You know, the other thing that the real inside bombers were doing is that they knew when the insides were getting buffed, and they would come the same day after the buff and do the insides first.
Smart.
And so they had the whole thing. And so I didn't have an understanding of that. And
so when you talk about that, it's the mid-80s, something like that. How old are you at this moment?
I was 14. I was 14 years old.
Okay. So we have really to picture that too, you know, as a outsider or even somebody trying to picture this stuff. You're 14 years old, you're in New York, everything is destroyed, graffiti everywhere, the graffiti we have seen in all these movies, Warriors and stuff like that, and you're starting you start this adventure basically, because it's an adventure, and you go inside the train, you're trying to put your name, but it's covered of graffiti. So that's super interesting, because this is really the picture we have of this New York City, this dream picture of New York City. So you have been there.
Yeah, so I was there at the time. So my neighborhood was also filled with graffiti, and so in my neighborhood there were lots of writers. There's been graffiti since the 1970s, and there are very well-known bombers in my neighborhood. People like OE3, P13, NG, all kinds of crews. UN1, a crew called CW that was very famous. Okay. You know, another crew called LOC. And so their tags were everywhere. Their tags are everywhere. They had pieces around and drops around, and so so I got to see it. You know, an artist named Adam, ATOM, his stuff was everywhere. Pieces, really cool, and then you see it on the trains as well. And so it was very, very interesting.
Okay.
To grow up in that area.
Yeah. We could talk about your career into graffiti for hours, but I want really talk about different topics, and I'm sure you will come back for my podcast and you will talk only about graffiti because you know a lot about that, you have a lot to say about that. But I want to talk also about why you started this Museum of Graffiti and what it is, because the first time I've been there, the first time I visited you, it was last year. I've seen what you guys did with that, and it was kind of really a slap in my face because it was something I've never seen before. So it was something about the real graffiti, the culture about the graffiti, and using the code and the rules of the real museum, which is really a big celebration of our culture. I want you maybe to talk about how it started and why you did that.
Okay. So just, so I'm also going live now on the Museum of Graffiti's Instagram. So we're doing a double live session. And so
Museum of Graffiti, yeah.
For everybody that's joining me on the other account, I'm speaking to Fuzi, and we're talking about the Museum of the Graffiti and why the Museum of Graffiti exists and how I got involved in building this museum. And so for me, I'm a fan of graffiti. When you grow up in a neighborhood or at a time where it's so popular, where graffiti is everywhere on the streets, it's on the trains, and you start doing it, it changes your life, right? It changes your life if you stick with it. It's either a good thing, or for many people, it's a bad thing. For me, it was a little bit of both. But for me, I was very lucky as a teenager to meet writers like Venn, like my Ghost, like SB1, Cavs, Cento, who were very active, but who also cared about documenting it and taking pictures. I also became very good friends with Henry Chalfant. And so as a teenager, we would go to Henry's studio, and Henry would let us in. And and Henry created the book Style Subway Art. Henry created them, and Spray Can Art. Henry created the film Style Wars. And so Henry was spending his days taking photos of trains for years and years and years. So when you go to his studio, you see the portfolio of all these pictures, and you learn about the history through the photos. And so being very young and going to Henry encouraged us to take pictures. He said, you know what? I'm not going to do this much longer. I don't want to do this. I'm doing other things. I want you to start to document the trains for yourself. You guys should take pictures of your own stuff. And so we did. And so we got better cameras. We started spending a lot of time on the train stations all over New York City, taking pictures of our stuff, but taking pictures of everybody's stuff. One question about that. Before you guys realizing that it was important to take pictures of other graffiti and stuff like that, have you been aware about other people doing that, or only outsiders like Chalfant or Martha Cooper or other photographers were doing that? So we were not aware of other people taking pictures of graffiti, because on the train stations, we would go to the train stations. We had train stations where people would go and take pictures. The only other people that we saw taking pictures were writers, you know? And so writers tended to take pictures of their own stuff, some of them. And so we bumped into these writers everywhere. I remember bumping into Dero, Dero, and Psycho, TC5, the first time up on East Tremont in the Bronx. I met all these people. That's how I met Cento. That's how I met all these people. It was taking pictures. And I ended up becoming friends with all these people because they were out there also looking for their trains. And many times you would not see it. And so they would ask me, hey, did you see this train? Do you have a picture of this train? And what ended up happening was we started trading pictures. So for many years, we would get together on Saturdays. A bunch of us would get together every single Saturday and go to the 1 hour photo place with our negatives and put in orders for pictures so that we would trade, so that everybody had a kind of a full history of what was happening at the time. And so it was.
So sorry. So it means that people were kind of friendly together to share like that photos. It's something from the outside seems really nice, but
it was like that, but not always. It was not. It was friendly, not always. I know that sometimes there were fights that would happen outside of the photo place or around the corner of the photo place. But you had to be invited. And so we were the ones that were doing it, and we were the ones that were inviting you. And so typically it wasn't a problem because only we know that we were doing it. You know, if you received an invite, you would know. Most writers did not know that that was happening.
Okay.
You know?
So it was before this internet connection. You could make connection with people another way. And it was just being there and spending time benching and meeting people and sharing these photos, which is super interesting. So you started to do that. You started to have archives, like keeping photos. And at some point you said, what, like, I have to use these photos, I have to share these photos. What was the state of mind?
Sure. And so for me, that happened. And so what ended up happening is by the late 1980s, maybe early 1990s, graffiti zines started coming out. And so there was already IGT that Phase 2 was doing. There was Can Control there was Ghetto Art out of Los Angeles that turned into Can Control. And that was Power and Charlie that were doing it. And so we saw, you know what, there's a different way to share pictures. There's a bigger world that's not just New York City, you know, and there's people that want to do this. And so I think that woke me up. And so I did a small zine. And then I ended up becoming a publisher and launching a magazine called Stress. And so Stress in 1995 was a very radical street culture magazine. It was a bit more like an anarchist mentality. It was very much pro-street culture.
It was not just about graffiti, right?
It was not just about graffiti. It was about everything having to do with the streets, or what we thought was street culture. So hip hop music, or gangs, or prison life, or health, or whatever. Kind of everything. Intersection of any of the things that were going on in the inner city. We saw it as a New York City magazine that covered all kinds of things. And so graffiti was one of those things that was covered. And so it allowed me to have a place to showcase the photography that I was taking for many years, but also to do interviews with these artists or these writers that I knew, or maybe I didn't know them, but now I had a reason to talk to them. You know, so now, you know, and so that was to me the beginning of understanding that it was important to sort of share our history and our point of view and our stories together. And so sometimes I would write stuff, but a lot of times other people were writing this stuff. Really, it wasn't we wanted to have a first person point of view. And so as an example, Phase 2 was one of the columnists. He had his own column, a page in every single issue where he would talk about anything that he wanted to, and basically he would yell at the whole hip-hop community to get their shit together and act like, you know, adults and protect the culture, things like that.
I remember this Stress magazine Special Graffiti was really, if you guys can get your hands on that, you have to really you have to discover this issue. For me, it was like, wow, I was like, finally people, like, cause I think JA did something, a text, I think Is the Wiz did something, and they talk about racking paint. I was like, wow, finally some people will talk about what is the writer's everyday life. And it was a super good issue and super cool photos. So yeah, if people can dig a little bit and find this Stress Special Graffiti, it was a really good one. And it was the moment you said when you basically learn how to work with a newspaper, like sharing contents. It's so you learn by yourself doing that, or did you have a team or something?
Well, no. At the time that I launched Stress, I was in a university,
Okay.
and so I decided to get a degree in communication.
Mm-hmm.
And so I learned everything about publishing, about magazines, about communication, and then ended up meeting people that had an interest. And really, the magazine was something that was created by myself and my friends. Okay. It was all friends or friends of friends that all believed that we needed to tell the alternative stories that were not being told anywhere else. And we wanted to be honest and give the truth. So when you say a story about racking, we did that, mm-hmm. And so that's because it's real. That's what happens. And so we wanted to share all this information. And we learned how to do it by doing it. None of us, nobody that was part of Stress, no one had experience in magazines. We learned how to do it on our own by doing it.
That doesn't show, because at this period, people were doing like this kind of graffiti zine, which was really amateur. It was really interesting, but it was amateur. And Stress was another level. It was kind of a real magazine. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's interesting to understand that you guys were learning about that too. Okay.
Right, but we were already, when I launched Stress, I was 24 years old. Mm-hmm. I was already a parent. Yeah. I was serious. We were all very serious people. We were all maybe radical thinkers, but we were all very serious. We all wanted to be successful. We all wanted to participate and give something to our community. And we wanted to be owners of our own business. Okay. We wanted to do things in that way. And so we were not, all of us were, from the street people, so to speak, at first. But we matured like this, and we wanted to succeed. And so we were talking to people like Jay-Z and Eminem. We were meeting all those people, and they were at the same level as us, from the same places, and everybody was trying to succeed and make a business out of their love and their talent. And so we were approaching it the same way.
That's interesting also to talk about the business, the money into that. You want to keep it real, or at least having this really showing something real about the streets and stuff like that. But you talk also about making it a business, which I remember growing up, at each time we were talking about graffiti, it's like no money, we don't want to be involved into any kind of money related stuff. I think it's super important, because now it shows that you need money to do that. You need money to have the Museum of Graffiti. You need money to do anything into graffiti. So it's not like graffiti versus money. It's not like something we have to be like, we can make graffiti and we can make money. You know what I mean? But it was something I was really kind of against, and I think a lot of people in this community had this state of mind. I don't know if it's the same in the US, but I know at least in France it was like that. As soon as somebody has a, I don't know, spray can shop or something, everybody would be like, no, he's making money on us or something like that. What was your opinion about that, about this relationship with money and graffiti?
Sure. Well, there was this notion of selling out. Right, that's what you're talking about. And so when we were teenagers, we were very concerned with that. We were anti-selling out. We were anti-making money. I remember one time myself and my crew, Ghost, and a bunch of us got into an argument with Dondi, because we were calling him a sellout, because he was no longer painting trains and he was just doing fancy art stuff. And we're like, you guys are fancy artists. The trains are still bombed. You should still be bombing trains. And so we had a very naive and maybe young way of looking at things. Yeah. Not to say that bombing is naive, but naive in the sense that we didn't see the whole picture, all the possibilities that exist. And so for me, by the time the early 90s came around and I was at university, and I was really reading all this kind of radical stuff, I realized that it's a very powerful idea and an important idea to own your own business, to be free and make money for yourself, your own way, to work for yourself, and to not depend on others to make your way in society. And to me, that was part of hip hop. I think that many people in hip hop, like the graffiti writers, maybe only didn't really understand that and saw it very differently. But that's because we didn't get the full lesson, because the lesson is to be free and independent, you know, and that's radical. But a lot of us were stuck in this poverty mindset. And so being poor is cool, or not having and only stealing is cool. But imagine if instead of stealing all the spray cans, if you had enough money that it didn't matter, that you could give money to that spray can shop and give it to them happily, you know,
Yeah.
and support them financially. But we didn't have money. And so because we were all poor and we didn't have money, we didn't understand things about money. But as we got older and we started to study, we started to understand the relationships that we had with money. And we understand it, you know what? All our friends that were selling drugs, right? Making money selling drugs, they're all getting killed. And they're all going to prison. So they're not really making money. They're making money for a little bit of time.
Yeah.
And all the workers that are working for them on the corner, they're not making money, but they have the highest risk to die on the street. And so I started to look at things differently. And I believe with the emergence, when hip hop started to blow up and rap music started to blow up, and the rappers, let's say like Jay and some of these people started to talk about money in a different way, people started to say, you know what? I should own a business. I should own my own stuff. And the music changed, and it got a little bit, it got very capitalistic, but it got, in a way, it explained that you should be an entrepreneur, that there's opportunities. And I think that by the 90s, we started to get more and more examples of entrepreneurs that were doing it. And so for me, I had good examples around me. And that's really what I think drove us. I mean, Henry Chalfant was an entrepreneur, you know, all the writers, they were entrepreneurs. It just, I think for me and my generation, we just had to stop and say, you know what, is it better to go get a shitty job? Or is it better to maybe make money with your art or do this kind of thing? And so the entrepreneurial mindset really started to sink in when we became young adults, when we started to have families. You know, how are you going to support your kids?
Yeah, and something important, you can have a business, you can be independent, it's super important, it helps you to be independent, but you can continue to bomb the trains, you know, it's not like something, right. It's not business versus, so you can stay a real writer.
We didn't understand that. We thought you had to quit
and
then to go do that, you know, and then later we realized, no, like, I remember when Days came back and started painting on the streets again, you know, and we were like, wow, this is incredible. Days, who had retired to go into the gallery world and crash, they wanted to come back and start painting in the streets again, and they did. And we were sort of surprised that they would do that, because we thought, wait a minute, is that even possible? What?
Yeah.
Why do they even want to do that? But
there are no categories like that. You can do that. You can be at the museum, and you can paint a subway, and you can have a business. Right. You can do all these things. Yeah,
right. You know, and so now we see writers that are like that. Writers that are bombing trains. They're painting murals. They're doing streets. You know, they're having art shows. All the same. They're doing all of it.
Yeah.
You know? And they're 30, 40, 50 years old, and it's okay. But it's a new thing. It's sort of like, this art form is so new that, you know, we're only 50 years old and we're still learning, and we're still breaking the rules, and we're still developing in different ways, you know. And so I think it's very important to understand that there's no limits. You know, some people talk to me about, you know, pricing their art, like if they're selling their art and they say, oh no, that's too much money. And I'm like, my response is, it's not too much money. it's maybe not enough money. You know, there's people that sell paintings for millions of dollars, and so how can you say that it's too much, right? We have to think big, and we have to grow, and we have to see that there is no limit to where we can go.
And how do you see the future of graffiti right now? How do you see that? Because like you said, it grows. It's like, it seems it's this huge stuff. It's going in every kind of directions. What do you think is the future? Do you think maybe the future is into NFT, is into the digital, the metaverse? Where is the future for graffiti?
You know, the future is unknown, right? But the future is in so many different ways. There is the incredible thing about this art movement is that new people enter it every day and rewrite the rules. They change the rules. They bring new innovation. They bring new style. They take old styles and they bring the styles back. They find new ways to do it. You know, for the most part, graffiti is now legal and illegal, and they're still both legitimate. There's some people that do graffiti and they do burners and things like that never painted illegally or rarely paint illegally, but they get props. They're legitimate. That's their way. There's other people that will never paint legally, that are only painting illegally, and that's okay too. There's people now that are writers that have gone to become some of the biggest and best muralists in the world. You know, I think of people like Faith 47 from South Africa. I think of people like Okuda from Spain. These people have painted illegally and now they do something else. And I disagree with what someone said with metaphor, saying that they're toys. They're not toys. They're just carving a new path. I think calling them toys makes us be stuck in an old way of thinking, but the future is being rewritten by the people that are doing it. You know, and a lot of the old writers, they're not around to teach people. So these young people are teaching themselves and rewriting the rules in their own way. I think the future of graffiti is for those that are involved in it. If you're not involved in it, you're not going to guide it and shape it. And so the future of graffiti is what Fuzi wants it to be. It's what I want it to be. It's what people that are participating in this, what we want it to be. And so if we say the future of graffiti of NFTs is NFTs, that is the future of graffiti because we say so. And because we're making it that. If the future of graffiti is bombing trains, that's because Zeb, who's on here listening to us, because he's bombing trains and he says it's the future. Yeah. You know? And so we make and we determine our own futures, you know? And so the only people that don't have a say in it are those people that are on the sidelines and they're just talking about it, but they're not doing it, you know?
But this, what you're talking, and 100% agree about that, and it's super powerful and stuff, but it also shows that we are to be kind of helping this culture, you know what I mean? So building stuff to continue, maybe to protect this culture a little bit. You talked about the insiders, the people who do that every day, and this is these people who have the right to basically they're building this culture. But there are a lot of people around trying to surf, or maybe they are just interested into that, or to surf onto that, or to make money into this culture, and it's at us to protect it. Maybe this is what you did in a way with the Museum of Graffiti, right? What was the goal when you started that, and can you talk about this museum, please?
Sure. So the Museum of Graffiti is a museum that's for finally dedicated to graffiti art. And so, you know, I've you know, loved this movement and appreciated it for such a long time. And for a long time, I was waiting for someone to do this. Why there isn't a museum already is what I was thinking. You know, why haven't they made it in Paris? Why hasn't someone done this in New York or in Australia? And so I ended up getting invited to help other museums do exhibitions. And each time I was like, wow, these places have so much money. They have so many resources and so many professionals. Why are they only doing graffiti for like 3 months? And why don't they buy graffiti artists' work and put it in their collection? They're not doing that. And so they were sort of pimping us, you know? And so I said, you know what, I'm tired of that. You know, I'm tired of that whole pimp artist mentality. And I said, well, why can't there be a museum that is started by artists? And there are examples of museums in the world that artists have started. And so doing that research, I was encouraged that it is possible, you know. And so I was very fortunate to move to Miami to work on an art project and meet the co-founder of the museum, which is Allison, and she shared a similar mindset that I had, which was do it yourself. We can do this, you know, and we felt empowered enough to make it happen, you know. And so with her knowledge of sort of here on the ground and my knowledge of graffiti, we were able to start building it. And so what's the point of the museum? The point of the museum is, like all museums in the world, it's to exhibit artists from this movement. It's to preserve the stories and the artwork of this movement, and it's to uplift it. It's to teach about it so that people can understand better about this movement, and so that we provide a narrative, a story, a history that can make people not think of graffiti as only gang activity, not think of graffiti as only destructive, not think of graffiti as only the little kid that's 12 years old that's doing it, but to teach people about the great contributors to this culture, the pioneers, all the artists from all over the world who've done it. And so to position it so that we show all sides of it. And that's what museums do. We decided to do it because we believe in the power of this art movement. We believe in the power of the art form to change lives, to change neighborhoods, because we've seen it happen.
You know, something important on what you just said is having this big picture. So you said it's not only people destroying stuff, it's not only gang, it's not only the bad stuff, but it's also part of that. You know what I mean? And this is what you show also in the museum. You don't show only the nice stuff, the nice murals, which people usually love, but you show also the throw-ups, you show the trains, you show the subways, graffiti, you show the gang graffiti, you show also a room in the museum. For me is extremely important, is the room where you show also people who has been in jail for that. All this newspaper where you see this guy going in jail for 2 years, 3 years for graffiti. And the other room is this nice graffiti that everybody loves, like these big murals and stuff. And you show that it's both are part of our culture. You can't have this nice stuff if you don't have this guy who has been in jail. And this is, or in prison. This is really important, and I think it's something you did really well. Another thing I think it's really important is the part to be independent. And you said, okay, I have not seen any museum about graffiti. It was only like some exhibition sometimes in some museum. But what I did it by myself. We put money into that and we did it. We are independent. I think in Europe, or especially in France, people wait for the government, the help of the government to do this kind of stuff. They want, like, you know, everybody's complaining, whoa, we have nothing, but do it. And if you do that, you have to put your own money. You have to find maybe friends, maybe, you see, I see all these rappers, they have money, they talk about money, maybe they talk less about hip-hop, but they talk about money. You can go to see these guys and say, okay, you like graffiti, it's part of our culture, maybe you can invest some money into that. It's a way of thinking probably extremely different than just waiting for the government or big museum to help you to create this kind of stuff. And this is what you did with Alison, and that's a big step up for me to see stuff like that.
I think it's important. I think it's a very, I mean, maybe it's an American way of seeing things. I don't know, but I think that it's, I mean, even here, people were always saying, like, why don't you go get the government help, or how much money does the city give you? You know, are you sponsored by the city or the state? And we're not. You know, we're independent. We do it on our own. We are trying to make it. You know, it's not guaranteed. You know, we're going into our third year. It's not a guarantee that we're going to make it. We're going to make it is if we figure out how to run this museum in the right way and figure out, you know, for all these people that you're mentioning, those rappers, those billionaires, those millionaires, to support this museum instead of maybe supporting that museum because they gave that museum so much money last year. Yeah. You know, and so, you know, when you build these museums, these places that are supposed to serve the public, that's because that's what we're doing. We're basically serving the public, and we're on one hand we're serving the public, and on the other hand we're serving the art community, right? The writer community that we love. And so what we need is a third group, which is the people that have money that believe that this is worth supporting. And sometimes it's just members. And so if people visit the museum, they pay to come into the museum. That money that they give to come into the museum, that helps pay the salaries of the people that work at the museum. If we don't do that well, if we don't tell people to come, if it doesn't work, we close and we go out of business. And so, you know, the things that I'm learning about the museum world, just like any business, you have to do good marketing. You have to find strategic partners. For a museum, you have to find sort of angel investors or donors, members that are going to support the vision of the museum. And so the stories that we're telling inside the museum, the exhibitions that we're doing inside the museum, it's critical that they are smart, thought-provoking, beautiful at times, so that the people that come that might be those members, those supporters later down the line, they see it and they feel it and they get to learn and change in their view and say, you know what, I was going to give money to the Dali Museum in Spain because I love Dali so much, but instead I'm giving it to the Museum of Graffiti because I believe in the mission of the museum and I want to see you succeed. And so that's part of the work that we have to do. We have to convince the world that graffiti is valuable because we already know it. Yeah. Now the rest of the world have to know it.
But in the same time, it's a fine line between showing something attractive for these angels, investors, for this public, this wide public who doesn't know anything really about graffiti, and keeping it real to the culture and showing also the part that they don't want really to see, which is the tags and in the streets, you know what I mean? And I think you guys do a good job with that because, like I said, you show this room with the people who has been arrested in prison and stuff like that. It's a real mix between the graffiti that is like illegal and stuff like that, and the graffiti that is well accepted by the public. So it's really a mix of these two stuff. And actually, this is the real graffiti. This is it. This is these two stuff together.
Sure. Well, listen, we have to do that. We have to do that because we have two publics. We have the writers, the artist public, and we have the regular public. Yeah. And so you can't fool the writers. This is for the writers.
Exactly.
I'm a writer, and so I know all sides of it. And so we have to support the movement, however it looks. Whatever it is what it is. And so we're here to tell the truth. We're here to show the story. And it's such a big global movement that we do little by little. You know, we change the exhibitions. We showcase. You know, we don't produce that many shows a year. It takes a lot of work and a lot of money to produce shows every year. So we're producing like 5 exhibitions a year, and it's a big world of writers out there. So slowly but surely we're doing it. But I think that we're at the beginning. We're a new museum. We're still in the infancy, and so we have great expectations of it growing and becoming a bigger and more well-established place that could be around for the next 50 years.
But you guys already changed your location, or really close, but having something really bigger than it was already. So it's a new location. I want to say something about also the fact that, you know, often people talk about like, okay, wow, that's super cool. The guy's doing a museum. Wow, super good. Oh, Fusy is doing a podcast. Wow, that's super cool. But when somebody say, okay, but for the museum, you have to pay, I don't know, $10, $20 to enter to support this museum. People are like, okay, maybe for the podcast, you have to pay something. People say, oh, no, no, I don't. You have to support what people are doing. You know, it's also part of being part of this culture. If you want stuff continue, you have to participate, you know. And sometimes I'm feeling like, okay, guys, you're part of this adventure, you're part of all that, but you have to give a little something, you know. You have to, instead of giving your money to Amazon or to Netflix or to Starbucks, give a little bit to your own culture. And it was just, yeah, I don't want to cry about that.
No, listen,
it's important.
It is important. And I think more and more people understand that, you know, and if you can't pay because you don't have the money, then you have to tell us. You know, so we have at the museum a program with the libraries in Miami. And so one day a week at the libraries, you can get the passes and you come to the museum for free.
Oh, okay.
You just have to go pick it up at the library because we know not everybody has money to come to museums, and they should be able to be available to people that don't have money, you know? And so we do that, but you know, we're creative about that, right? We understand that people need to come that don't have money. We also agree. I also agree with you that people that do have money should support, you know, because it's important. And even more so if you're part of this culture, because you're helping to keep the culture alive and teach about the culture to other people. And that helps everybody.
Exactly.
You know, but you have to see it as this ecosystem or as this bigger community, not just as an individual. And I think a lot of times we forget and we get caught up in our individual heads or an individual sort of feelings or ego, and we don't realize that there's more happening than just what's happening with us. You know,
I think it's
kind of what it is.
It's super important to support our culture, like buying books, buying a little something. If you don't have money, buy just a little something to just prove that okay, you care about that and you want to help. And well, that was just a little something about that, because sometimes I'm a little bit angry when sometimes I hear some comments like, it has to be free. No, it doesn't have to be free. We spend your time and energy making that. It doesn't have to be free. So,
but a lot of it is free in the streets, right? A lot of it is free in the streets. And so you can walk around. I tell people, listen, you know, if you don't have money to pay for the museum, or if you don't want to pay for the museum, walk around the streets. We've produced so many murals in the neighborhood for free, for you to enjoy for free, because it is out in the streets, and that's where graffiti is. So go out and walk around and enjoy it. But when you want to learn and you want to talk and you want to get into history and you want to support the artists, come back and pay for the museum. And people like to hear that. They're like, oh, some of it is free. It is outside. You don't have to pay to get in. But if you want this, we're artists run, you know, we're independent. And so every single dollar that comes into the museum, it matters, you know? And so people, you know, a lot of people are not thinking about this. They think because maybe they think the government supports this. It's not the way it is. And so we're like, listen, every dollar goes back into the business. That's how it works. Yeah. You know, to keep it going.
Yeah. So now that we talked a little bit more about the museum, so I invite people to, if they are in Miami, to come to visit. It's really important. Now I want to talk about this NFT.
So that's a very new and different thing. What I want to do, Fuzi, is can we take a 1 or 2 minute break?
Yeah, sure.
For me, I mean, you could continue to talk to the public. I'm going to log off just for a minute to get a drink. And then when I log back on in just a minute, I'm going to log on as Museum of Graffiti instead of Alan Ketz.
Okay.
So that we can tell all the people from Museum of Graffiti, because we have so much more followers, to join us in this conversation, because they're very interested in what the hell this NFT thing is.
Sure. See you in 2 minutes.
Mr. Fuzi.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, we are back. Fauzi. So I have some friends making some jokes about me. Fauzi. It was my
Fauzi?
nickname.
Is that the Muslim?
No,
but that
I'm
would be
not.
the way
I'm
maybe
not.
to say,
I'm
or
not.
the
I'm
Arabic
not.
way of saying it.
Yeah, it's Arabic way. It was kind of
So now,
joke.
Fuzi, I'm going to turn
So
the tables a little bit, and I want to just introduce our audience just for me. So now we're on the Museum of Graffiti
okay.
live as well. I'm Alan Kett. That's Fuzi up top, right there. And we're going to have a conversation. So for those of you that are just joining us now, we've been talking for an hour with Fuzi about my background, about graffiti and the beginnings of the museum. And the last question that Fuzi, you asked me was about NFTs, right? And
correct.
And what is an NFT, or what the hell is it? What is it all about? You know?
Yeah, what the hell is an NFT?
So
Is a good
to
question.
me, an NFT is a few things. To me, it is a powerful tool for commerce. It is a powerful tool for revenue generation, is number one. And to me, it's also a way to give power to artists. And so what do I mean by that? So an NFT can be a digital image that exists on the blockchain. So it's totally digital. And what's cool about the NFT is that once you sell the first NFT, the second time that same NFT sells, the artist gets a royalty. So it's a little bit the way that, let's say, music artists work. So when music artists, when their songs play on the radio, when their songs play on Spotify or whatever, they get a royalty. If they don't get a royalty, they don't make any money. Yeah. And so artists, visual artists have never had that possibility. And so this is a new way for artists to make money and make a living for themselves. So for me, what is an NFT? An NFT is a digital image that's uploaded into onto the internet, onto these companies that do this. So platforms like OpenSea, Nifty Gateway, you upload your picture, you put a price on it, you pay to put it on there, and then you tell your community, your followers, your fans, your family to go out and buy your art and support it. And so it's just another way to sell your art in a digital format. What's also interesting about NFTs is that the NFT, what I was telling you before about the royalties, that's a contract. They call it a smart contract. So that links with that picture. And so everybody that buys it, you know exactly who's buying it and where that is. And so if the painting behind me, if I wanted to make that into an NFT, what does that mean? That means I could take a picture of it. I could put it onto one of these platforms. I could say that picture goes connected to that NFT JPEG. And when you buy it, I send you this painting. And so you could do it like that too. But to me, one of the biggest values, or the most positive thing about the NFTs, is that artists are now able to find another way to make money to support their artistic careers, because artists struggle and it's a very hard path to take in life. And so any path or any platform or any new way that opens up a new path for artists to make a living, to me, that is a positive and incredible development. So I don't know if I explained it so well, but that's how I see it.
No, you explain it really well. And another part of that, because we were talking about supporting artists or supporting the culture in the NFT world, tell me if I'm wrong, but if the guy invests in you, basically support you buying an NFT from you, he can also make money in the future because he can resell this stuff. So can you talk a little bit about this part too?
Sure.
Because it's a kind of win-win.
Sure. So that's, the NFTs that we're talking about, sort of these digital images, they're sort of like trading cards or baseball cards or stocks, right? So depending on your level of how you collect or see things, you're collecting these things like you're investing in stocks, or you're investing into regular art, or you're investing into baseball cards. And what that means is that they're tradable. You own it. There's an open market. You could put it back in the market. You could sell it for more money. You could lose your money. But basically, you're buying something that has some value, and there's a market or a platform, let's say like OpenSea, where you could throw it back in there and resell it. And so if an artist does very, very well and launches an NFT project, the value of those NFTs can go up. And we're seeing it every day with popular projects, with some artists that are blowing up. You know, an NFT goes on sale, and let's say it goes for $300, and next thing you know, it's worth $3,000. And so it becomes an investment tool. The thing that most people don't understand is that the NFT is tied to cryptocurrency, which is money. And so this is all about money. It's about art, but it's really about money. And this is a technology that has been invented to get us free from the money of the governments and to have independent monetary systems that we support, that we determine what the value is, and that we trade without using government money, without it being that way. And so it's a pretty radical rebel idea, you know, and it's something that I support because I love the idea of supporting artists. I love the idea of doing something that is outside of the government control, you know, and to build power together. So imagine this. This is a crazy idea. Fuzi launches an NFT, right?
Oh,
right, which we're doing.
Cool
together,
idea already.
Right, we launch an NFT project.
Exactly.
The NFT project releases X amount of NFTs. Everybody in our community buys it, right? They agree with the value. Everybody buys it. Fuzi all of a sudden makes all this money. It changes your life. It helps your life become a better life because you've made this money for your artwork. All those people that have invested in that NFT project, they hold a piece of your art and they hold a collective worth. Let's say they spend $1 million, everybody. And then all those same people decide to let their friends know about it, and they start to trade and sell those NFTs, and those NFTs and that community grows in value, and all of a sudden it's worth 2 million, and everybody makes money. That's the power of the whole thing. It's an investment tool and a powerful tool that can change artists' lives. It could change the lives of collectors. They could change the lives of communities if people get into it and invest and do it now. It's a new revolution in money and art that's happening.
Yeah, that's super interesting that you explain it correctly like that people can understand that it's not only this new trend, like we're putting in pictures like that in the metaverse or whatever. It's also a way for you to support artists, a way for you to make money, and for the artist, a way to be independent also. And it's also being creative. You can be creative. You can do whatever you want. So it's really linked to the state of mind also of graffiti, you know, doing all this stuff by yourself, being free, doing what you want, and nobody can tell you, oh, you don't have to do that. You can do whatever you want, and this is super interesting.
Right
for
now,
the creative part
music artists are making NFTs, video artists are making NFTs, fashion companies are making NFT, corporations are making NFTs. NFTs are being sold that are tickets to concerts in NFT, and then you have forever the memory of that concert, the ticket saved with you, or you could sell it because people like to collect ticket stubs. And so there's utility that's being assigned to NFTs, so that there's more value. So it's not just a trading card with only the value of the trading card. Some NFTs, if you own one, it lets you go to this event. It becomes your membership to the museum, as an example. There's other ways to make the NFT valuable, and it's really only limited by our imagination and what we could assign that. And so the project that we're working on, which is the Glyphic Nft Project, which is you and the Museum of Graffiti working together, it's a project that launches your NFT, your own artwork, like what we're seeing behind me, but it makes it so that it is a generative project. So people buy it, they don't know which one they're going to get. They're going to get a unique NFT that's one of a kind, that has never been seen before, and then they own it. But having that NFT unlocks them, and they become a member in Glyphic. And what does that mean? That means that they go to the events that they get to get special prices on other NFTs. They get discounts on real world art. They get the ability to buy streetwear that we're making that no one can get. And so it's almost like a private club that's being created for fans of art, for fans of graffiti art, for fans of your arts, for fans of the museum. And so it's a membership. It's a club that we're building that is built on art. And so other people are doing this. We're doing it for our community and working with artists from our community to make it strong, to make it worth something, to make it valuable. So if you give us, you know, an investment, if you buy this NFT art, we want it to be valuable. We want you, if you're going to spend $300, $600, I don't know, whatever you're going to spend, we want to bring value to you so that it is worth holding on to. And then if you sell it, you make more of your value than what you bought it for. And so we're highly, you know, sensitive to receiving money for anything, because we want you to want to get a benefit and understand that it's more than just a little JPEG that you get. The JPEG is cool. The image is cool. It's unique art, but there's more to it than just this little thing.
Yeah, it's good that you talk about also what is the art, because for the moment it's random. You can pre-mint, but you don't see the designs. Okay, so this is a random choice. It's just to be there at the beginning and to support the project now. A lot of people already started to pre-mint and they don't have the design yet. So to talk a little bit more about the design that I created this last couple of months, there are 7,000 original unique designs. So each of them are unique. And it's all about my art, obviously, the new art that I'm making since this last maybe 6 years, about all these faces integrated together, but also references of my flash tattoos. So it's really unique stuff that I made for this NFT project. So hopefully soon, not hopefully soon, you will see what you get. But like said Kate, it was to jump into it right now, because it's going really well and we are really happy about that. And it's really, we're building a club, we are building like a community around this project. So maybe do you want somebody being involved into that, or what's the next step?
You mentioning that this is a project that has 7,000 units, that it is a pre-mint time, and that it's also something that you don't see. The reason why we do that, it's because it is a generative project, right? It is a project that is sort of a random creation that Fuzi's doing, and we want people to sort of receive it and it to be a surprise. So imagine this. It's sort of like, a lot of things that we're seeing in the NFT world, it's almost as if we're kids again, right? And so when you go buy a pack of Pokemon cards, right, you don't know what's going to be inside those cards, but you give the money anyway. And when you open it up, the mystery is there. If you've ever bought sports cards, you don't know what's going to be in there. And so the idea of the NFT done this way is the same exact thing. It reminds me of when we're kids and we go and buy this cool thing, except now it's not like $1, it's a little bit more because we're adults now, but it's the same thing, and it's a surprise, right? And then, it's like the Pokemon cards. You don't know when you go buy the Pokemon cards if you're going to get, Squirtle or Pokemon or whoever you're going to get, but you get it anyway. And then you know what? You didn't like the one you got because you're collecting all, you get another pack and you get another pack. And so what's going to happen with the NFT project is they're all going to come out. They're all going to be sold. Everybody that's pre-minted is going to have them. And then we'll make announcements, and people who maybe have 2 unlock another level. People who have 3 unlock another level. You might get one and you might say, you know what? I want to have these 4. And you look for the other ones that you like. You want maybe to have the all red ones. And then you start to do that, and you're buying them from other people that have already purchased them. So that's the trading aspect of it that exists in the NFT world. And so it's a bit of a game. It's a bit of an art project. It's a bit of a financial investment project. It's a bit of a club. It's all these things, and all these things are coming together because the technology exists now to do it. What's happening in the future is that these NFTs can be put into these worlds. And so now there's these people saying metaverse. There's these worlds that are these virtual worlds that are virtual cities, virtual places, that people have virtual homes. And it's this new experience. And so people are avatars. You know, Instagram just uploaded avatars yesterday, right, as a new thing. And so the world is changing into this virtual VR world with avatars and all this virtual stuff. NFTs fit into that world and they have value. And so if you get into this sort of avatar, I almost think of it like video gaming. It's video games meets collecting, meets art, meets banking, all this stuff together, meets graffiti. And then all of a sudden you have things that are of value for those worlds, right? And it's happening. It's been happening for years. The Sims, you know, Second Life, Fortnite, all these gaming environments have been created where people are buying avatars and they go in there to spend money, but you get nothing back because it's only a game. Now with NFTs, you own it. And so you get it back. You have your money. It's in your wallet. And when you want to sell it, you sell it. And so it's different because it's giving you power. It's giving the owner power. It's giving them financial power and an incentive to invest.
And you're still independent. You still have nobody telling you what to do. You know, you choose what you want, you trade at who you want, and you create also what you want. So you're really free to do whatever you want, which was a huge part of interest for me into this project. So I think a lot of people ask, so how is it working? Where do you do that? How do you do that? So maybe you can give them some so where they have to
if you look at the Museum of Graffiti's Instagram page, and there is the link, the Linktree link, you will see there a link to go to where you can participate in the Glyphic Nft launch. You know, you might also have it on yours, Fuzi. I don't know if you have it on there yet.
I have mine. So for me, you can go on Discord. You can also send me DMs. You know, I love to talk about that. I love to explain more. If you have questions, just send me a message. I will answer you. I will send you the links. I will explain you what it is, because it's something I love to do, and I want you guys to understand too. So
same thing with us. So at the Museum of Graffiti or at my personal Instagram at Alan Ketz, if you message me, hey, I want to know about Fuzi's Glyphic NFT launch, I can send you the private link. We're closing the link this week. It's a pre-sale. That means you could only get it for this week, and then it's done. We're closing it. We're closing it. The first wave of promotions is happening. I know NFT Paris has been happening, and so there's been a lot of promotions over there for this NFT. We finished NFT Miami here as well. We did a lot of promotions. Hundreds of people have been buying it, and so it's moving. And so we're going to take a break from the release. And so the first people that bought this NFT will be Genesis or Origin holders, and they'll be designated. We're going to go back into the metadata and assign them as like the OGs. And so it will be a different sort of a benefit that they'll get because they did this so early. But reach out to either Fuzi or myself. We can send you the link to get down with us for the pre-mint. And then otherwise, you'll wait until the whole public gets it and gets open, and it'll be what it's going to be, and the money is going to change. I don't know. But I would recommend getting involved now, getting involved early, and supporting this great project.
Yeah, do you have a date when this stuff is dropping? Because now, like we mentioned, it's a pre-mint only for invitation, only on this guest list, only if you reach to us. But when it will be open for everybody,
the date that it's supposed to be opening for everybody is May 1st. So it's a few weeks away, which is why we're saying this is a pre-sale only. It's only really for our friends and our family and our community, to give them the chance to get in here now, to be able to acquire it before it's open and anybody could find it and anybody can buy it. You know, so people outside of our community, and they just think, hey, we heard about this, it's cool, we want to invest our money. So now we're only promoting it to our own community. So we give our chance to our own community to buy first and be involved with it first. And to me, that's very important, to give them the first chance to do it. And if you're interested and you get the pre-mint, link from Fuzi or from myself, you're only allowed to buy up to 3. We're not allowing more than 3. Later, when it's open to the public, sure, but right now it's a limit of 3 because we want to make sure we give access to everybody so that more people can participate if they want. Okay, Alan, that was a lot of information. That was super interesting. I will share this live in story or something like that. People can listen. Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. And we talk soon. Thanks everybody who was there. Peace, everybody. Thank you.
See you soon.